Welcome to Multifamily Grit, where we bring in the experts to share their stories of the celebrations and struggles of one of the most important industries in the U.S., multifamily property management. Kerri sat down with Luke Leins to discuss how his team is challenging the traditional best guess nature of property operations. With a focus on data-driven decision-making and drawing talent from high-performing businesses outside of the industry, Luke and his team are looking to bridge the gap between complex data and directed, actionable workflows. Luke's approach is rooted in operational excellence and a willingness to cast a broader net for talent. By hiring experts from companies like Amazon and Whole Foods, his firm has built a robust Power BI platform and is currently developing sophisticated decision trees to streamline regional manager tasks. He brings a forward-thinking perspective to the table, advocating for a homegrown talent strategy and a deep commitment to the well-being of on-site teams through initiatives like profit sharing and livable wages. Today, we dive into how Luke is seeking a yield catalyst in an increasingly predictable market. We'll explore the 18-month journey of rolling out internal and owner-facing data dashboards, the challenges of pigeonholing multifamily operations into directed workflows, and why he believes the next big investment opportunity lies in operational innovation. We also touch on his passion for improving work-life quality for ground floor employees and his upcoming journey into fatherhood. Before we get started, this episode is sponsored by Fortress, the only core property management operating system built with an emphasis for affordable owners and operators. Fortress revolutionizes affordable management with features focused on automating housing assistance charges and payments to keep ledgers clean and accurate, centralizing file reviews and document storage through Fortress and AWS, and a free in-system smart waitlist to ensure your property stays in compliance. And don't forget, if you like what you hear today, please like, subscribe, and share with someone you think would enjoy this episode. Now let's get into it. Here's Kerri Davis sitting down with Luke Leins for a conversation about data, directed workflows, and the future of multifamily operations.
So, Luke, thank you so much again for being here today.
Yeah, Kerri, my pleasure. Glad to be here.
Yeah. Now, before we dig in, I'm actually excited to hear the story because I haven't heard it yet. Would you mind sharing with our listeners how you got your start in the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mistakenly found my way here 7 or 8 years ago, 8 years ago now. I was in financial services in my 20s, ended up getting into real estate, kind of ground up and acquisitions in the senior living space. And the owner ended up getting himself in a bit of a spot, so a number of us left, and I was looking for a job, and I found Alliance Residential. Had a great interview, loved the people, got hired, and I'm certain I did not know what I did for the first 3 weeks of working there. At the time, fourth largest developer, fourth largest operator in the country. I had never lived in an apartment. I had lived at home, and then I lived in houses in college and rented houses and condos after college. And so I did not know.
That's a bit of an anomaly. That's pretty rare, I think.
Yeah, I was cheap. So I felt like renting a room in a house with buddies was always cheaper than a nice 1 or 2 bedroom apartment. So I just was not close to multifamily operations at all. And then I'm going to say 3 weeks in, I was like, oh, now I understand what I do. So I was with Alliance for a little over a year, and then I got a call from the team at ResProp, and they had these grand ambitions of what they were doing and wanted me to be a part of it. So I ultimately said yes, and I'm coming up on 7 years at the end of this spring with ResProp.
Oh, that's such a great story, especially the fact that you've never lived in an apartment. So interesting. So what was it because obviously Alliance is a great company and you weren't there for very long. What was it about the opportunity at ResProp that pulled you away?
I think in anything we do, we're looking to be a part of building and working for a group that was already so established. I really enjoyed it and I loved the people I worked with, but I didn't feel like I was scratching the entrepreneurial builder itch that I think we all have to some degree. And ResProp had not really jumped into third party yet, and they were looking for a team to build out an entirely new business. And that's a hard thing to say no to, right? Is taking that shot. So yeah, honestly, it was a tough decision, but building and creating and providing lives and homes for people. It just means a lot more when you were there at the beginning and built it from nothing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I love that. I actually, when I joined Elmington, um, I actually came in as an accountant from like the finance background and an attorney. So I was focused on a little bit of their contract and regulatory risk management, that sort of stuff, but mostly creating their back end accounting operations. And coming in from that perspective, when I joined them, it was like the four partners, and I was like the first team member that joined the team. And it is there's something special about being there from the ground up.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah. So you got started at ResProp with that kind of promise to build something new. Where did you guys get started?
We so the background on the company was we were a private equity group from 2010 to 2020, and we had this what we thought was a really great operation. And as we scaled down our own portfolio, due in large part to market timing and some other factors, and decided to go pure play third party, we were like, we've got it figured out. This is just going to be a quick little transition. And so in 2020, we got into third party and realized that it's exponentially harder and more demanding. And not only are you dealing with different personalities and ways of doing business, but you also have to convince people to work with you. Whereas if you buy a deal, there's no sales pitch, right? So you need an attractive platform. And so it was our first look into platformization, and we had a great business, but we hadn't platformized anything. So we got to start thinking, okay, based on the things that we're doing very poorly today, how can we alleviate and fix that? And at one point, I want to say 2 years ago, we were sitting there and we had 140 things on a list of things that we can improve in our business. And we haven't stopped, but we've just been trying to solve problems as they come up and do right things. And it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I love that. And that list of 140 things and the things that you're continuing to add to it, and as you try to solve them, what do you guys like? What do you look to when you're trying to solve problems? Like, what are the things, right? So I think that a lot of companies say, like when I'm trying to solve a problem, like we go to this group or we always look to this solution, like whether it's like tech or people or hiring or like a specific team at your company. Like where do you guys differ? Like where do you get started when you're trying to fix one of those problems on the list?
So the big thing that we do a little differently, I think, is so we all do have peer groups, or our head of talent has peers and competitors, peers in the industry that they'll bounce things off of, and our head of compliance has the same thing. Operators have operator friends. But I think something that's really been helpful to us is we have never really benchmarked the big successful companies in our industry. We've benchmarked what we think are the best operators in the world, right? One of our big influences has been Amazon, because I think most of us at our company would agree that Amazon is the best operations business in the world. And so why steal from someone who is doing it well in a specific subset? Why not take best practices from someone who's doing it across the board? So we've made some key hires from Amazon. We've brought over some key, our bulk procurement platform is what Amazon uses. Our data visualization and BI tool was based off of Amazon's. So I like to think we've gained a lot from looking at some of the best businesses in other industries and applying that to third party operations.
Yeah, I love that. I actually want to dig in a little bit because that's incredibly unique. I think this is, I have spoken to hundreds, if not thousands, of multifamily operators, and I've never heard someone say something like, "We're using the procurement platform that Amazon uses." So that's so interesting. Where did that idea? I actually kind of want to start at the beginning. Like, where did that idea come from? How did you even know what Amazon was using, and what made you kind of source that out and start implementing something like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it all starts with books, right? So our founder, our leadership team, we have a required reading list. These books are very much based on measuring against the best companies in the world, finding inspiration from the best leaders and operators in the world. So it starts there, and then we start to see threads, right? It seems like Amazon comes up a lot as these different books are discussing operations. And so the next step was for us was going and finding some key hires, right? So we hired a head of tech at one point from Amazon. We hired a managing director who was high level Amazon operations. We hired our head of business intelligence, came from Whole Foods and Amazon Business. And so we started grabbing key resources and taking what they were already doing and asking them to, hey, apply this to what we do. And that started working out. And they brought some systems, they brought some resources, vendor partners. But the big one was how they think, right? They're thinking so much differently than we're thinking in this industry. That when we apply that thought model to what we're doing, we tend to just find really, really unique ways of solving problems.
How would you describe that they think differently? So like it's how they think. What does that mean?
Yeah, so so we do once a month we do a leadership training for all of our employees. I think down to like property managers and supervisors. And the impetus for that was I feel like we're in an industry that might not have as much business principle ingrained in them. Maybe they work their way up through a property. Now they're sitting in a regional or even an RVP role, but they're maybe missing some key just business fundamentals that others would take for granted. So we started a monthly leadership training, and I'm leading it on Friday. And a big part of it is actually walking through how to solve problems. And I think these larger companies have already really applied this to the way they're doing things. But we started writing memos, right? So Amazon, instead of PowerPoints, everyone writes memos. And so instead of having a big PowerPoint full of fluff, we'll do a memo. Here's where we are. Here's where we want to be. Here's how we get there. And in Amazon meetings, they all read the memo and then discuss after the fact. So we've applied that, and then just decision trees, right? So if you look at how we're looking at the things we do, first you need to break things down into first principle, right? At the most basic elementary level, what is the principle of the thing we're trying to solve? Apply some Socratic thinking to it, right? So we're starting to question everything about it. Why are we doing it? Why are we doing it this way? Why is the person who's doing this doing it? And is there a better way? So really breaking it down to a level that anybody can jump into the conversation and make it very uncomplicated, and then just beating the heck out of it, and then building decision trees out of that with very, very basic concepts. This is how a lot of these big companies are distilling very complex ideas and processes down to actionable decision points. And so we've started applying that level of thinking to what we're doing, and I think it's working reasonably well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's definitely creating some unique outcomes. That's for sure. So I would say, the fact that because this all started with me asking you, like, how in the world did you guys start utilizing the same procurement platform that Amazon uses? So, like, if that's where it's coming from, like bringing in those leaders who think differently and then helping lever that to teach your team to think differently, then it is creating these unique outcomes. But then I have to ask, like, right? I mean, I've spoken to so many groups who would love to use other solutions that aren't industry specific. Like let's use HubSpot for an example, right? Like HubSpot is a phenomenal marketing platform that is industry agnostic. It's used by tons of industries across the United States. But property management can't really use it, and a huge part of that problem lies in our tech stacks that we have. So like you guys were able to branch out and utilize a procurement platform that's not property management industry specific. How were you able to make that work in your tech stack?
Yeah, so the impetus for it, this specific platform, which actually I think there are maybe 6 or 8 other groups that are using it now.
Okay.
The initial question came up of how are we not assigning purchase orders to invoices as a business? And then the question was, why is nobody in our industry assigning purchase orders to invoices? And how are we doing our procurement? So we looked through what was there and realized that the solution existed, but it didn't integrate with any of our PMSs, right? So we ended up taking our PMS business to market, ended up switching PMS providers to a group that allowed us open API channels. And so we were able to actually build on integrations to really anything we wanted, instead of being beholden to a captive set of industry specific, probably not terribly great in the broader picture, vendors and resources. So it takes some building. And people much smarter than me. Our head of IT, he's from Norway, so he's been really stoked these last couple of weeks with the Olympics and how well Norway is doing. But he's been able to build a lot of these tunnels that allows us to plug in what we think is the best period versus what Yardi or Entrada or RealPage or whoever it is has available to us.
Yeah. I mean, that's some really forward thinking, right? To put that amount of energy into your procurement platform, like being willing to completely shift your operating system. That's a big move. Is that the way that you and the ResProp team think broadly? Is that like you're pretty much willing to change anything, even if it's a big change, in order to make these advances?
Yeah, I probably, I don't think I had any gray hair when I started here. Um, we're doing things the hard way. Our company slogan internally is "Find a way or make one."
Yeah.
Um, and boy, do we take it literally. So if there's not a solution present, like we've built a number of tech products for ourselves because the tech product that we wanted didn't exist, right? And so it's recognizing that no sane person would go to some of the lengths we've gone to try to solve problems. Uh, we've had fun doing it. Not the easiest way, certainly, but the most exciting way, I think.
Oh, I love that. I agree that it's really exciting to start from, I think, scratch and build the thing that truly solves the problem rather than constantly trying to retrofit what exists today that honestly was built to solve problems from, if I'm being gracious, 30 years ago, but in many ways, 50 years ago. So
Yeah, and I think a lot of those problems we don't even know what the problems are yet, right? We know that
yeah,
generally the industry is dissatisfied with site level operations. Generally, we have a lot of challenges, and I don't think we've quite solved it yet. But as long as we're out in the industry together trying to solve problems, I think we're eventually going to find the solution.
yeah, I agree. And I want to dig in on that with you a little bit more. Something that you said to me the last time we chatted. Before they get there, I actually do want to ask. So you've talked about a lot of the things that you've built at ResProp, and one of the things that you've done, and you've even mentioned this with the Amazon kind of data modeling. So you personally have pushed really hard for more data-driven operations at ResProp. What does that actually look like in practice?
Yeah, so going back to the Socratic method, right? Like not being afraid to ask stupid questions. I've never been an operator, and so I don't know how we do things at the site at the regional level, and I'm very forthright about that. But my question is always, how do you, okay, here's a problem. Like how do you as a regional, as an RVP, as a leader in our business, how do you come to the decision on how to pivot or adapt? And I've always been fascinated that no one really has an answer. Um, so I've been on this little crusade trying to figure out all these top companies and like where are their decision trees coming from? How are they making calls on deals? And what we've realized is it's really just the best guess of an individual. Um, I don't think most successful businesses and industries work that way. And so we got kind of infatuated with this whole idea of, can we aggregate enough data in order to start making decisions upstream before they become downstream NOI issues, occupancy issues? And so this whole Power BI exercise has been an effort to aggregate disparate data from, I think we've got 6 or 8 different systems plugged in there, look for upstream trends or indicators, and then solve to correct those before they downstream become issues. Really, really interesting stuff. One that I keep seeing is renewal satisfaction survey scores. If we can predict occupancy based on renewal satisfaction scores, we can actually look at renewal satisfaction scores. If they're low on a property, we're going to have downstream vacancy issues. If they're strong, we're probably going to be able to hold really steady. So it's actually indicating something more about leasing, although it's based on renewal surveys. So really, really cool things that we're kind of digging up and saying, oh, we didn't think this was important. And now, thinking more like an economist holistically, we can start maybe making adjustments in other areas. So yeah, it's been neat. I think ultimately what we're striving for is some level of directed workflow, right? If X, then here's your decision tree, a couple of inputs, and then there's more data informed um, outputs guiding decision making. We're working our way towards that. Honestly, it's going to be years before we get it fully figured out, just because every property is so different, every situation is so different.
Right.
But creating a framework for operators, regionals, property managers, it doesn't exist today. We have LMS trainings and trying to enforce just right thinking in our people, but true decision trees or true directed action doesn't really exist. So that's ultimately where I think we'd like to end up in the next couple of years. And it's been fun trying to figure out how to tackle that one.
Yeah. Well, it sounds really fun, but it also sounds like this is the ability to um, use it, create it, and implement it is largely going to come from the people, the type of people that you have right throughout the entire chain. So whether that's your on-site team members, your regional level leadership, your RVPs that you've mentioned a few times, or even owners or the corporate leadership. So, we've talked about this a little bit, but I'd like to dig in a little bit more. You even said to me before that the industry tends to hire from the same pool of operators, and that not only do you intentionally look outside of that, but you've actually struggled with it when you have hired from that same pool. So, what does that mean for you, and what has your experience been there?
Yeah, so the contention that we hold is that the industry doesn't have enough talent to support what we're working with right now from a property standpoint, and so as multifamily continues to grow, we are hitting a talent deficit that's really causing a lot of issues. Right, we're seeing wage inflation in an outsized way, turnover. I don't know what third party turnover is. I want to say it's north of 50% industry wide. So that's got terrible downstream ramifications, and it causes problems for people, right? At core level, our teammates on site are people who we want to have good, stable livelihoods, and it's very hard to do that when there are so many external factors keeping them bouncing around. So we've tried to be really static and keep our people. The big one is we're trying to infuse new talent into the industry. So we've been running since we were a PE shop. We've had a management training program. So we'll bring 25 or 30 college graduates through every year. It's a 2-year program. They start as leasing agents, move up through the property, and eventually find themselves a home in our corporate support teams. That's been really strong, and we're trying.
Wow.
We're like, this is the silliest thing. Like, we need to make property management sexy somehow.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know how, but it's so unappealing to people that it's hard to get people in. But we've got a great industry, right?
Yeah.
In our company, we're not a huge business, but we're running 105 businesses, right? Each one of our properties has its own org chart. It has marketing, procurement, accounting, everything. And
Yeah.
the idea of being able to run a portfolio of businesses is phenomenally exciting. But there's this stigma, right? We're the only B2C real estate, with the exception of, I guess, like hospitality where they're visiting. But for us, we're actually managing like the homes, like where people choose to make their home. And it's very intimate and it can be very messy. And for whatever reason, I think we've just fallen out of favor, or maybe we were never in favor. The other thing is this is a very new industry, right? Our industry
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, is 20 years old. I mean, third party management has not been around much. And so we haven't really built our own identity as to what we want to
Mhm.
look like as an industry. And so I think just becoming more attractive, creating more opportunity, demonstrating the excitement that can be in this business. I think all these things, if we all work together, will eventually draw more people into the business. But today it's a talent deficit, and so the answer is either we figure out a way to bring new people into the industry, attract new people into the industry in mass. Right, we're competing against construction, we're competing against the billion different desk jobs in the country. So it's very hard for us. So it's either we figure out a way to eliminate people, which I'm not terribly bought into yet, or we figure out a way to keep people happier, keep them more excited, and get more into the business.
Yeah.
It's one of our big questions. Again, we haven't solved it yet, but right now, what we know is we want to attract people. We want to provide good good lives to them, good income. Like one of the things I've enjoyed over these last 6 or 7 years, it's such a stupid thing, but seeing our support leaders who started with us in individual contributor roles, whenever we have our team meetings, seeing them pull up in nicer cars than I drive, and they have just bought their first houses and they're having kids. Like it's really cool to see the lives that can be created through our business and through this industry in general. And so seeing how we can translate to the site level and create that same opportunity for them. I mentioned to you, we just started rolling out a profit share program at
Yeah.
our Christmas parties, and it's not big numbers, right? You know as well as I do, our margins aren't crazy, but when our maintenance techs who have been with us for years get a reasonable, a check that matters to them, they start feeling like owners of a business. They start taking more pride. They get sticky. They get more
Yeah.
motivated, and we're looking for unique ways to get people excited and provide good lives. And it's been a fun experience.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more. You know, I feel like there's this world in a similar world in hospitality that we all know about, right? I mean, like we've all been to hotels. So like in your situation, like you'd never lived in an apartment community, but you had been into a hotel. So we've all been in that industry and we've experienced it. We know the jobs that exist there. There are hundreds of colleges across the United States that have some form of a hospitality component, maybe not a degree, but there are at least courses in it versus real estate and property management, the management of apartment communities has never had that sort of limelight. And we've never seen that. And still today, there are so many kids who are graduating high school and college who don't even know about this opportunity in property management and in apartments. And I would argue I'd much rather run an apartment community than a hotel any day. I'd much rather work. First of all, the hours are better. But second of all, I've heard stories about from people who were previously in hotels and now are in property management, and hotel stories win every day. So
Right.
like I just can't it still shocks me, but I think that you're right. Like we've got to find a way to like one, make it known, make these opportunities known, make especially appeal to that generation that is that's really starting to come up and seek these new areas of opportunity and employment. Like we've got to make sure that it's known to them. And then you're right, we've got to make sure that it's an enjoyable lifestyle. Because if it's not, to your point, they're not going to stay. There's way too many competing opportunities out there. And I love you sharing that about the profit sharing. I think that property management, especially third party fee management, margins are slim. It's a tough industry, but I think that doing whatever you can to get that buy-in from your people on the ground floor, it makes all the difference. And you would think like your owners would support that too.
Yeah, they do. They love it. And again, it's not something we're doing to be sharing with people. It's something we're doing because we want our people to live good lives and thrive, right?
Yeah.
And then yeah, mentioning like burnout and people leaving, the regional and RVP roles in our industry being the worst roles on the planet. Um, they need some love and support because we see a lot of people work their way up through the site level, finally get that RM role, and then
Yeah.
they're like, I never want to see an apartment complex again. So industry wide, we need to build out a little more back office for our regionals and
Hmm.
try to help them with some of the tasks because the regional job is just the worst job. And I'm hoping that as an industry we can find some ways to centralize. Like we talk about centralizing a lot of uh, property admin tasks in the business. Everyone is centralizing something on site. No one, I don't think anyone has really tackled centralizing some of the demands on our regionals and offloading that so that they aren't constantly losing their minds.
Yeah.
But I think there's a big opportunity there.
Yeah, I think so too. Actually, something that we've tried off and on that my um, property management company is trying really hard to have like accounting representatives for each asset so that like you have a high level accountant who can communicate with the owners or with that owner's asset management team, because asking accounting questions of a regional, again, it goes back to this whole concept of like what are we really expecting our operating team members to do, right? Like are they expected to be like phenomenal operators and make sure that they have the right people in the right places who are achieving the right metrics based on what's happening at that specific property? Or are we asking them to be financial experts? I think something that we identified early on was like, we don't want to expect them to be financial experts. Quite frankly, I'd much rather hire a people person who's great at like logistics and moving people around than one who loves sitting around all day and digging into numbers. And so that's something that we early on decided to shift over to, like accounting representatives who were great, which is not always the easiest thing to find, but great communicators as accountants who could have those conversations. But I think you're right. Like, I think thinking outside of the box and identifying more of those areas of opportunity to offload from the regional so that they can focus on their highest and best use is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's really cool. Y'all are doing that.
Yeah, yeah. I think that comes from me, like my background as an accountant and seeing the way that regionals would answer some of those accounting
Yeah.
questions. And I was like, whoa, like either we're going to have to full on train regionals to be like true accountants, or we need to have a different venue for those questions. So
They're really doing like MBA style work, right? If you look at the MBA, you have to be dangerous in marketing, accounting, operations, all these things, and we're asking
yeah,
that of our regionals, but our regionals, they don't have MBAs; they're figuring it out as they go. So yeah, scaling back their scope somehow, I think is going to be healthy, if for no one else, for the regionals themselves.
yeah. Well, and it also goes back a little bit to, we talk about our community managers, our on-site community managers as being like CEOs of this business. And to your point, like you have a portfolio of companies if you're a regional. And so like, what would a normal like CEO of a $100 million asset be making? And then what would the normal portfolio manager of several $100 million companies be making, right? And like you equate that to like what we pay our community managers and regionals. And like I'm not here advocating like we can't. I mean, I know the margins in property management companies. You can't pay your regionals much more than you're paying them right now. But like there's a big imbalance there.
Yeah, all of the obligation of a CEO running a $200 million business
Yep.
without the income. that's
Yeah.
that's the regional job, absolutely. And everyone in this industry says, right, you've got someone who's making $80,000 as a PM overseeing your $90 million asset,
Yeah.
and we don't think something is broken, right? Uh, it's a wild thing to think about.
Yeah, it really is. I think about it a lot, like the disparity between the responsibility and the paycheck for a lot of those team members. It's rough. And yet so many of them still show up and do a really great job every day. And even those that are right, like even those that are coming from, whether they're coming from like a smaller group like your property management company or mine, or if they're coming from, like the bigger players like like Graystar and like in those like really big groups, they still most of the time try really hard. But I do think that it's interesting. You've seen this and I've seen this too, where sometimes it's really hard to take a contributor, whether that's a community manager or regional or even a VP, out of one of those really big companies and kind of like plug them into like our more entrepreneurial companies. And a lot of times that doesn't breed the success that you would think that it could or should.
Yeah, I mean, I came from a larger company. Um, I wasn't there long, and I was pining for something smaller, less structure. Right? We've had a lot of trouble hiring from the largest 3 PM group. I think I think the thing that I would say is I think that they've decided the bounds of what they're capable of or able to do in their role, and I think that we're still exploring the outer edges of what impact we can have and what we can influence and change. And I think that's it's just hard for someone who comes from these are the 5 or 6 things that we can do to change X, Y, and Z to think outside the box. I think I mentioned to you, we have a property. They're like, they started the podcast. I don't know how well it's doing, but our property was like, we want to do things differently. We want to get on the map. And the PM started a podcast, right? We've done some quirky things, just getting involved with the local community. And I think those are the things that people enjoy doing most. And when you have a larger platform that says that's not our domain, that's not in the SOP for what we do, I think you lose a lot of that spark in people. So they have to want to be entrepreneurial, right? That's what this leadership training we're doing is all about, is teaching everyone at every level of our business to be a leader and think like a leader and act like a leader, and not believe that we're set in any specific box, to really think, the zanier the idea, the better. And the worst thing that can happen is it doesn't work or it fails. But the
Yeah.
best thing that can happen is we find a totally new way of doing things. And that's why we're doing this.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And completely agree. And also my heart bleeds towards entrepreneurial anyway. Like I'm constantly asking that same question of like, why are we doing it this way? Like why? Just before I even like start to fix it, just like why are you doing it? Or why is this thing even an issue? Um, so I love that. Um, okay, so Luke, you said something to me on our last call that really intrigued me. And so I want to ask you to kind of share your thoughts on this. And I know that you said before that you don't have the answer, but I'm just really curious about your thoughts. So you've said that right now, right, with the industry being the way that it is, that what the market mainly being the way that it is, that everyone's really looking to find yield on the deal. They're looking for that yield on the deal. And there's a yield catalyst, I think you said, at the principal level. What does that mean? And you don't have to solve it. But I'm interested to know what you think the answer is.
Yeah, I must have been smarter a couple of weeks ago than I am today. That sounds great.
Yeah, it did.
Something I realized when because I had come from doing different asset types, and we were building models from scratch for very different, more niche products. Um,
Yeah.
in the senior space I was in. So I came over and I started doing multifamily, and I realized that all the P&Ls look the same, right? All of the ratios, all of the rules of thumb with how much we're spending on each GL category per unit per year, they were static. Didn't matter who owned a property. It doesn't matter who operates the property. It was all the same. And I was like, what, man, it's so consistent. And so early on, I was exposed to monkeying with this. So we took our cost drivers and said, okay, our biggest cost driver is taxes, insurance, right, and then people. So people have a set income, and properties have a set. We're paying at the time. This was years ago, $1,400 on average per unit per year, whatever. What if we remove all our maintenance staff? We plug in one dude who's really good at overseeing people and projects. We take the rest of our techs, turn them all into sole proprietors, and just have them running work orders across all of our properties. So we're running one quarterback on the facility side, and then we're subbing out 100% of our work to a homegrown subset of 1099 contractors. And so we did that on some of our properties, and it was absolute chaos. But we were able to effectively, we were managing traditional model contract services plus payroll against crazy new model contract services plus payroll. And the numbers were actually pretty accretive. But Keith, the maintenance supervisor who was doing it, I think he was gonna lose his mind. So we pulled back. But that was my first glimpse into exactly what you said. Why are we doing things exactly? Why does marketing cost on average $300 per unit per year? Why is admin this, right? How do we start poking at some of these really consistent utilities, right? Utility spend, is there anything that we can do there? So how can we try to reimagine the T12, the budget, the P&L, and start almost recategorizing, taking a different lens? So we know that revenues are pretty static, right? Even if we were to chop things up a little bit differently, can we just blow out, if two bedrooms in this comp set are renting for $2,000, it's not like we can just go start charging $3,000 unless we're providing some, and this is where it gets really, really screwy, unless we're providing some like outsized ancillary benefit, going into more of like the community living, where I just heard a rumor that I think it's happening. Lifetime Fitness is going to be building like apartment complexes that are attached to Lifetime Fitnesses. So you have the gym, co-working, I'm a big pickleball guy, pickleball, And so you have this intense ancillary value to the place that they're living that's going to allow you to charge outsized dollars. How can we take something like that and reimagine it? You'll see in like Las Vegas, what they did is they started building in lifestyle programming, and there's DJs on the weekends and like mixers, and there's things that you can do on that front. But then on the expense side, can we just start thinking a little more critically about these dollars we're spending? What's the yield on them, and is there a way to just recreate the P&L? And the dream, I always say, the dream is to look at a property and be like, I don't recognize this underwriting. I don't recognize this T12. It's so materially different from what we're seeing. And so yeah, don't have a lot of answers there. We're definitely picking at it, and I think there's some groups that are doing some really cool things on that front to try to provide ancillary value to drive outsized yield. And it can take many shapes, and I don't know what our niche is going to be yet. But it's fun to just use, if nothing else, as a thought exercise.
Yeah, I agree. Well, that was a great answer, and you sounded just as smart this time as you did the last time we spoke. So
My answer might have been different, but
well, no, you actually said you didn't know the answer, but you feel like that's a big opportunity, and that's exactly how you ended this one. So you're very consistent. And thanks for sharing that because I agree. I think I've had so many conversations with groups that are either developing or acquiring, and how like over the past few years, deals that were able to pencil easily have now gone, extremely red by just through the increased cost of insurance. Like that's it. Just insurance costs have caused like deals, that previously, you could have paid like $250 a door for. Now the only way to make it pencil is by paying $100 a door. And just insurance is causing these sort of like massive discounts. And so I think the industry has to start thinking creatively, especially for those who are really looking to grow.
yeah. There's one I forgot. This just came up in the last few weeks. This hurts my brain. Tokenized rent to own fractional ownership of the investment itself. This this came up the other week, and I was like, oh my gosh! But it makes a ton of sense. So you slice off a part of the promote, you tokenize it, and then renters can actually earn their way into a fraction of that ownership. I think
Oh my God.
I think that's coming. And I totally forgot your question because I just remembered this. I don't know if it's along the same vein. But again, just another one of those creative ways. Uh, you mentioned that there's been a lot of red, and the reality of what we do very much has been showing its face in not the prettiest way. We've seen distressed deals where the homes that people are living in are no longer livable, and it's heartbreaking. A couple of my team members got fleas at one of our DDs. Distressed deal. We were coming in with a rescue group to fix it up, and like people are getting fleas doing the DD. The property was just unlivable. And then you see the side of the partners we work with, right? Like you see some guys that invested in 2022 and they get equity wiped, and all their investors are wiped, and you're like, the humanity of what we do and the stakes that we're dealing with are very real, right? So that I think that's part of our obligation to some of these owners is say, can we think of a unique way to sell this? So actually, how the tokenization came up was a deal that got bought in 2022 that's having a tough time, looking for a little additional help, and trying to keep people in or attract outsized rents by tokenizing part of the ownership of that deal. So
That's so interesting.
yeah, it's a big one. I don't want to be involved in that one. Someone else can do that one.
That seems like when you have to get that creative, it seems like just a little messy. But I mean, that's a really unique idea.
That's the new economy, right? Like that's bringing the new economy to what we do in a very unique way. And I would bet that in the next couple of years we see that, right?
Yeah.
We'll see.
That's interesting. Well, Luke, I as we wind down the conversation, I'm really excited to ask the last two questions of you. The first one, just because you just leaned into the fleas incident, so I'm sure you have a good story from your time in multifamily that you'd like to share with us.
Yeah, I actually funny. I sat with this question for a while, and everyone has the weird stories, fleas, doing a DD and you come across something terrible, right? People getting scared, this and that. But none of those stood out as stories that I tell a lot. But I have one story, and I think that again we've talked a lot about site teams, and just by virtue of deals sell on average every 4 years. When it sells, management changes, all this turbulence. I think that our site teams are in a really tough position because they're changing businesses every couple of years. They're changing properties every couple of years. There's not a lot of static comfort for them. So we had a young lady in South Florida. She was living in Homestead, and she was working on one of our properties in Broward County. She was commuting almost 2 hours each way to work with our team. Our area vice president down there in Miami, George, he's got a great team, and there's a lot of loyalty to the company, to his org. And she was commuting almost 4 hours a day to continue working with us. And just like the shock of learning that someone believes so much in what you're doing that she's willing to drive that far daily is jarring. So George called me one day and said, "Hey, is there any way that we can get her a property closer to home?" And I was like, I wish it were that easy, but we can't. Literally the next day, we got a call about a property that was like 2 minutes away from her house. And 30 days later, we were on that property, and she was the property manager there. And it was just like, I don't know why, but it was just such a good feel-good story, because I put myself in this woman's shoes, just imagining the nightmare that it was that she was going through just to try to keep living with us and our mission, and how happy it made me. Like for weeks after, I just couldn't stop thinking about her going from a 4-hour commute to like a 3-minute commute. I just thought it was the coolest thing. So kind of a weird, dumb story, but something that stuck with me is like, hey, we have the means in this industry not only to elevate the lives of our residents, but also elevate the lives of the people that work with us and for us. And seeing it materialize so clearly like that, just something that'll always stick with me.
Yeah, I love it. And I also will say, I don't think it's a weird, dumb story, especially the conversations we've had thus far. Like the way that you talk about how important like upstream decisions are to downstream impact. Like this is such a direct reflection of that if the happier you are able to make your site teams by whatever decisions it is that you're making, whether it's, having the conversation about the person who's driving 2 hours and that bothering you guys so that you're thinking about it, trying to find a way to fix it, or profit sharing, or whatever it is that you're doing, like those decisions, if they're making your teams happier, it's going to make your residents happier, which is that, or the units are going to lease more quickly, or your reviews are going to be better, which causes you to lease more easily. Like whatever it is, like there is, I would say, direct correlation to that downstream impact from those upstream decisions, and feelings that you guys have about how you lead and manage your teams.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, so then my last question, which now I didn't even know this part. I didn't know that you guys had required leadership reading that you had to do. So now I'm really excited to ask this question, which is, what book would you recommend to our listeners?
Yeah. So it's not on our required reading list. It's on my required reading list, which does not get distributed to new teammates. So our required reading is very much like we have war fighting and effective executive and all these great leadership and thought books. But I am trying to constantly remind myself that the whole point of this is to connect with people and to enjoy what we're doing.
Yeah.
I don't think that really comes through in a lot of these business books. I'm not a great lover of business books in general. But my favorite book, and the book that I always recommend to people, and I say it sounds silly, but read it and see what it does to you, is The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. It's a French name that I can't pronounce. But the whole thesis of this book, I've read it pretty consistently since I was a kid, is to view the world through the lens of a child, right? We're supposed to be having fun. So many of the things that we think are important aren't. And so it's really just a reframing of our mental model of, hey, we're supposed to be having fun. We're supposed to be interacting. We're supposed to be loving other people. Let's do that, right? Don't sweat the small stuff. Don't sweat the P&Ls, right? Worry about people and the impact you're making on them in your life. and the time that you're spending with them, and everything will just fall into place downstream of that. So a book written for adults in the form of a children's book that I think just really can change the way you look at the world.
I love that. I will absolutely be getting a copy. I couldn't agree more. About a few years ago, I decided we have this dog. Actually, she's sitting right over here with me right now. She is a 14-pound Cavapoo, and she is just the happiest thing to have ever lived. I swear. Like, she wakes up in the morning, just like so excited to be alive. She sleeps with my oldest son, and so she'll wake up and she will just start to like, she's so happy to be alive that she'll just start to like do her zoomies in the bed, and she's like all up in his face, and so like a few years ago, I like something just hit me, and I was like, can you imagine like waking up that happy like everyone should wake up like that happy to be alive every day, because you're not guaranteed, no one is guaranteed this next day, and like you should just be so happy. So I know that makes me a little silly, but I love the philosophy that you shared behind that book, and the value in it. I think it's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Luke, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to be on this podcast. I really enjoyed the conversation. I think what you and the ResProp team are doing is really special. And I think that your personal outlook and ideas on how to run a property management company successfully and really differently are really unique and so interesting. So thank you so much for being here with me today, and sharing you and what you're doing with our listeners.
Yeah, thank you. And it certainly isn't me. It's the great team that I get to work with, which is what keeps me going every day. But yeah, thank you. I appreciate sharing with y'all, and I respect and love everything that y'all are doing too. And yeah, let's all work together to make this industry that much better.
Well said.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Multifamily Grit. I hope you enjoyed hearing Luke Leins' insights on how data and diverse talent are reshaping the industry. His perspective is a powerful reminder that looking outside of our traditional box for excellence can lead to the operational breakthroughs we've all been searching for. We also want to give one more shout out to Fortress, our episode sponsor. Fortress is committed to revolutionizing affordable property management with smarter, more efficient solutions that keep communities thriving. If you found value in today's episode, be sure to like, subscribe, and share it with a colleague who would enjoy Luke's thoughts on leveraging data visualization, building homegrown teams, and creating a more livable lifestyle for those on the ground floor of multifamily. Until next time, stay gritty, stay passionate, and we'll see you back here soon.